You ready?
Yeah. Oh man, this is gonna be a good.
Do I get a scone with this too?
You can get a scone. I mean,
I need a whole meal.
This is your party, man.
It's 11:30. This is y'all 12 o'clock. Y'all didn't plan this well. I need a snack.
Already we're off to a bad start.
I need a snack. It needs to be snack with theologians.
This is our
Lunch with theologians.
second edition or second episode of Coffee with Theologians.
Coffee and snacks.
And we have the incomparable Dr. Esau McCaulley joining us. How you doing, Esau?
I'm doing all right. Looking forward to getting some decent coffee.
Okay, so this is the big question: Dunkin' Donuts or Tim Hortons?
Tim Hortons.
Tim Hortons. Why?
I love Canada. Isn't it the Canadians? Didn't Tim Hortons start? Yeah. So yeah, like a little touch of Canada. It's good to go with the coffee. And plus, when I lived in New England, I had Dunkin' Donuts all the time, and so I got sick of it.
Dunkin' Donuts a break.
They need a break.
Okay. Works for me. So you have actually been living on coffee lately.
Yeah.
There's a book that's being written.
Yes.
You're doing this thing where you're teaching classes.
Yes, teaching 4 courses.
Preparing for a conference.
Yes, the Call and Response Conference.
So listen, let's talk about the classes. You're teaching biblical
Greek. Yes.
Okay. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, I think the students, I never got as many side eyes as I did when I first started teaching biblical Greek, because the students are mad at me because, it's hard work learning the language. It's not easy, but I always tell them of all of the stuff that I experienced at seminary when I was where they are, the ones that had the most impact on me were first learning about the historical background of the New Testament and the Old Testament and learning the languages. And so I think this is probably one of the most valuable things you can do is get a good understanding of the background of the Bible and know the language as well.
Wonderful. So that's the case for, availing yourself, delving into the languages.
Yeah, I tell them most students don't realize how much of the Bible they have memorized. Okay. And so, you're at the point you're reading the Bible and you forgot, like you just read 2 chapters and your brain kind of went away for a little bit and you go, what was I reading? That's because you know the text so well that you kind of slip into memory. And what the language is, one of the great things about languages is this slows you down. I promise you won't zone out when you're struggling word by word, sentence by sentence, paragraph by paragraph through the Greek text. And sometimes the very process of just slowing down makes you a better exegete.
Wow, that's awesome.
Because the language isn't magic, right? It's not, there's this special, it means this in the Greek. That's not what it's about. It's really about slowing down, taking things in, and really getting a feel for what the author was trying to communicate.
I love it. That's a good segue for coffee.
Yeah, so we're not going to get the chicken maple waffle sauce. That's like 8,000 calories. I feel my heart slowing down just looking at it.
Right.
I'll just take a small coffee with half sugar.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have 2 small coffees, half sugar.
Okay. Otherwise, they'll put like 8 pumps in.
8 pumps in?
Yeah, and I'll be bouncing off the walls.
Okay, gotcha. We don't want that. Students may not want that either.
No.
So that's excellent perspective on justifying why we learn the language.
Yeah, and I do think that every now I tell my students that one of the things that happen, it's one thing to go into a Sunday thinking, what am I going to preach about or what I'm going to teach about, and you read through it and you go to a commentary and you're hoping to find something that inspires you. Mm-hmm. I tell them most of the time, by the time I've worked through the text in its original language closely and made the translation for myself, by the time I'm done with that, I usually have the beginnings of a sermon.
Wow, that's amazing.
Because it sparks so many ideas and it forces you to think through in a real way what the author's trying to say. So it's the suffering makes you a better preacher and communicator.
The suffering that's a hard sell. Yes, please. That's a hard sell.
Well, what else? I mean, it's almost like you may have those things where they would tell you can get a 6-pack if you just put that little strap around and it shock you. But that doesn't work, right? You got to do the 50,000 crunches. That's just how it happens.
Right.
And in the same way, you can't there's no hustle to learning the biblical languages or getting a better understanding of the scriptures. At some point, you got to sit down and do the sit-ups to do the work. And so That's part of what it is.
There's no way around it.
There's no way around it.
But it sounds like there's an exciting,
I had some students who say to me, now I don't even like opening my English Bible. I go, well, now you're going too far. But that's the joy, because they find there's nothing like the thrill of discovering something that you didn't know when you've had the Bible your whole life.
Oh, absolutely.
And you see that, and it often inspires me. So.
And what are your tips in terms of when a student is starting a language and they're intimidated? What do you tell them?
I tell them that that some part of it is rote memorization.
Okay.
So you have to learn your paradigms at some point. You have to learn your vocabulary and to begin translating as quickly as possible.
Okay.
Because one of the things that's really exciting is that when you can translate the Bible for yourself. So within the first or second week, we were translating. I was like, guys, we've worked through John. It's like, oh yeah, I can do 1 John. And so that's what I say. I say get into translation as early as possible, but you still have to do some of the work in memorization. That's inevitable. And don't rely too much on the software, because there's a bunch of software that will help you, but you don't want it to become a crutch. You want to be able to use that as a tool, not something that's going to do the work of translation for you.
Okay, amazing. That's very helpful. So there's another course you're teaching called Being in the Word.
Yes.
What is that?
So one of the things that also, a lot of my courses comes from struggles that I had as a pastor.
Interesting. Really?
So this is like, I kind of go, I want to fix all the problems that I had so they won't go through the stuff that I went through. I think that sometimes when you first go into ministry, there's parts of the Bible that you're familiar with, and there's parts of the Bible that you're unfamiliar with.
Okay.
And so you go, okay, I know John, I know Matthew, I know maybe the book of Romans, but I'm not going to mess with like Hebrews, I'm not going to mess with Leviticus. It's kind of parts that's like the great unknown areas of the Bible.
Yes,
and so what I said, I wanted to have a class that gave the students a basic orientation to the whole of Scripture, so that no part of it was closed off. So when they're teaching a Sunday school, or they're preparing a message, or they're leading a small group or a youth group, they have the whole Bible to use, and not just the portions that they talk. Because everybody knows John, right?
Sure.
Everybody loves John.
Right.
Everybody loves Luke and Acts and maybe 1st and 2nd Samuel. But when was the last time you heard a sermon on Numbers or Leviticus or Deuteronomy? And so the Being in the Word course orients students. It walks them through the entire biblical story, while also giving them a basic orientation to scholarly issues and things that are going on. Because there's a whole conversation about the Bible that's going on in the academy that sometimes doesn't make it into the pulpit or into the pews. So I want to give them that in a way that's accessible, not so they go up into their churches and show their displays of learning, but so they can at least have an understanding of the debates and issues surrounding the Bible and its interpretation.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So this is stuff that they can take right from the classroom.
Yeah, right from the classroom.
Pulpit,
Yes.
or what have you.
So I have 2 assignments. One of the assignments that they have to do is it's like spiritual. It's called exegetical spiritual formation, where they're looking at the text and they're trying to ask themselves, well, how can I apply this text to what's going on to me personally? How can I develop as a Christian, as a leader, as a husband, father, mother, whatever? But there's also another assignment where they're asking themselves, well, how does this text apply to my congregation or my actual setting? And so I'm asking them to think about the text in 2 different ways. Because I think in order for it to effectively be preached to the congregation, or even be taught, or even applied in your life, it has to hit you first before you send it out to everybody else.
Absolutely.
Telling them what they need to do. You need to have your own spiritual
That's
reflection.
amazing. I love that. And then there's this little thing called the Call and Response Conference.
Oh, yes. The tickets are on sale. callandresponseconference.com.
Yes.
Yes.
Response. So how would you explain that to someone who just...
Yeah, so the simple answer to that is it's a conference about the past, the present, and the future of Black Christians in America.
Wow.
So we feel like there's a lot of shifts and changes and things happening in the culture, and there's a lot of African American Christians some are in Black churches and some aren't, who are wondering about their place in the church. And so we wanted to say, before you can ask about my place in the church, I need to find out where we came from. How did Black Christianity start? What were some of its founding principles? And then the second thing we want to do is look at the state of the church. Where are we as a people right now who are trying to practice the Christian faith in America? And then lastly, it's like, what what does the future look like for us? Now, those are kind of conceptual ideas, but within those conceptual ideas, there's a lot of practical workshops about how to actually function. So what does it look like to, if I wanted to be a writer, if I had the dream, I always wanted to be a publisher, but I've never had the connection. There's a publishing track. If I'm a pastor who wants to talk about how can I reinvigorate my preaching and my teaching, there's a preaching track. If I'm someone who's passionate about social justice and those kinds of things, there's a social justice track. So you can go there and learn from nationally respected leaders about how they can effectively engage in whatever their passions are. And if you're thinking about seminary, there's a seminary track with seminaries from all over the country who's going to ask the question in particular, how can we minister to students of color? Because they have unique challenges that they face. So if you're thinking about seminary or any kind of educational experience, there's that opportunity as well. And so it isn't just like this this academic concept, this abstract concept of Black Christianity. It's practical tools that when you leave, you can say, I have stuff that I can take back to my church to use properly. Okay. And if you say, like, well, what if I don't have a lot of Black people in my congregation? Well, maybe you come to the conference and you learn about some effective ministry tools, right? Maybe you can step your game up a little bit. Rather than, and so I tell them, I've said that the conference is for Black Christians and the people who care about them. Okay. And so I felt like that should cover everybody. And so we're hoping that it is an event that really blesses the city of Rochester and in the upstate New York area more broadly.
Now, we're not beneath name dropping.
Yes.
Right? So we will shamelessly
plug
names.
So let me see. Bishop Claude Alexander is going to be there. Awesome. Leader of a large church in North Carolina. Sho Baraka, Christian hip hop artist, is going to be there. Amina Brown's going to be there. Wow. She's a poet and a public speaker. Christina Cleveland, who's a professor at Duke, who's done a lot of work in racial reconciliation and justice and self-care. Wow. There'll be Truth Table, African-American women who do a great podcast. Awesome, it's been quoted in the New York Times and all kinds of other places. Yeah, it's a great podcast. There'll be, Bishop Paul Morton has a concert that just became public. So that's going to be happening on Friday night. That's a separate ticket if you want to buy that. Okay. Deborah Morton, his wife, is going to be speaking at the conference. Trying to think who else. There's so many speakers. I can't even. I'm going to get back and kick myself from not naming it. But if you go to the website, I'm going to speak. But in the own conference, I'm only going to be on the stage for 10 minutes. So 10 minutes. Okay. So you'll hear more from me here than you'll hear at the conference, because I didn't say, hey, everybody come listen to me. I mean, there's tons of people who are more talented than I am. And so I said, why don't we bring the best in the country to Rochester, and I'll just sit back and let them cook. So, also Lisa Fields from the Jude 3 Project, who does a lot of stuff with African-American apologetics and reaching out to Black millennials in particular. So it's a great lineup of people, young, old, men, women, people from the Black church tradition, people from the evangelical church tradition, people from the mainline church tradition. It's a little bit of everybody. So we really think it'll be a blessing to the community.
And you know what? The weather's just right.
October 4th through the 6th. I know. I had some of my friends who in the South, like, should I bring a coat? Do I need snow tires? Look,
probably on the 7th, 8th, 9th.
It's fine. I think the temperature is supposed to be 70 degrees.
See, that's perfect.
So you're going to be fine.
I love it.
Now, it could flip in a minute, and it could be a snowstorm. Now,
this is true.
Don't tell them that. Once they buy their ticket, they'll be fine. Yep, the Uber driver will be used to driving through the snow. So if that happens, you'll be fine. You just don't do it.
Yeah, that's exactly. You don't have to worry about a thing. Yeah. That is excellent. I love it. Call and response, October 4th through the 6th. Yeah.
Yes.
It's great stuff. And I think we covered a lot of stuff. Is there any deep theological things hanging out there that we need to?
I mean,
where are you at? Where are you at right now?
What am I working on?
Yeah.
Well, I'm right now. I'm reading a lot of African American theology and African American biblical interpretation for the book that I'm working on African American biblical interpretation.
Wow.
And I've just been humbled. There's been a lot of talented brothers and sisters who've written some stuff that have challenged me to think theologically through the issues facing people of color, who forced me to kind of refine some of the arguments that I made. And the more stuff that I read, the more I realize I'm unworthy of their company. And so I would say anybody who prays can pray for me, that I don't embarrass myself.
So what led you to write this book? What was your...
So around 2 years ago, there was when all of the stuff was happening with the police and all the shootings and those kinds of things. And I had this strong conviction that if my theology or my academic scholarship didn't serve the needs of the community that I was from, then what's the purpose? And so I had this real strong conviction. That's part of the end up with this conference.
Okay.
We got to do things differently.
Yes.
So we can't just sit there and complain and tweet about it. So I said, well, I'm a biblical scholar. And so what I can do then as a biblical scholar is ask the questions that my community are bringing to the text and try to put them in print and articulate them.
Okay.
And so the real hope of this book is to present a vision of a hopeful interpretation of the Bible that speaks directly to the issues and concerns of people of color. And I think that the Bible does do that. I think it does speak a relevant word to black people about the situation that are going on in their lives. And I hope to bring that out in my scholarship.
Oh my goodness, that's phenomenal. So many great implications.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it was in 1919, when African Americans were coming back from the war, they had this summer that was called the Red Summer. And the Red Summer was because there were so many lynchings and riots because African Americans who had been out to war had come back and expected new freedoms, but they hadn't been able to receive them. But coming out of the Red Summer, you saw a huge growth in African American fiction and poetry and literature, and it spurred on some of what became the Harlem Renaissance.
Wow.
And so what I think is that on a smaller scale, the things that happened in 2015 and 2016 was kind of like our Red Summer. I think it's really awakened something in the black community, black Christians in particular, who are trying to use their talents and gifts as best as they can discern them for the good of the church. Wow. And so for me, I want to say that my scholarship was forever shaped. And it wasn't that these were new revelations, but you get busy in life.
Oh,
and so you're trying to pay bills and be a good husband and be a good father, and you kind of forget about the struggle. And then I woke up, it was like, oh yeah. Because it's one thing to be passionate about oppression when you're experiencing it directly.
Yeah.
But when you get a little bit of something that can buffer yourself from it, you sometimes lose that passion.
So true.
And so it was just one of those times where it allowed me to remember in a real deep and personal way what it was like to be black in America.
Okay.
And so that's what I would say led to the Call and Response Conference and this book. It's all coming out of what I call like the new Red Summer.
The new Red Summer. Okay. Phenomenal. Never looked at it that way. It's amazing. That is amazing.
So when do I get to actually drink my coffee? That's the real question.
You can drink it at any time.
No, I'm not drinking it. I'm not drinking it. I'm not drinking it while it's bumpy. Because this is a new shirt. This is Brooks Brothers. It cost me a little bit more money. They had a sale, but I'm.
We just had a conversation about being woke.
You know what I'm saying? All right. This is the black Brooks Brothers. It's Brooks Brothers' black uncle, who they didn't want to claim. He's getting all the proceeds from this shirt. Don't worry about it. This is completely woke Brooks Brothers shirt. I promise.
And regardless of that, we still want stains on it. Right?
No stain. If there's a black version of Brooks Brothers, y'all send it to, type it in the comments, and I'll buy a shirt from them, and I'll wear it the next time y'all have me.
It should be.
Yeah. Who is the black tailor? I don't even know.
I don't know. I mean,
maybe that's our side hustle.
Maybe that's something we gotta
call and response.
Call and response shirts with
leisure shoots. Bring back the 70s.
I think there's a nice market there.
I think there's a gap. I don't know if that's necessarily.
I think we lost something.
The
conversation is taking a.
Yes. I don't know what happened to that. Here we go.
Just turn it around and set it on the. Yep, turn it around.
Oh.
We're looking out the windshield right now.
Okay. There we go. We're back.
It's a wild ride today.
Yes.
Very wild ride.
Turn it back a little bit more so we can see Kevin.
Okay, right there.
You can actually just twist the camera a little bit.
Okay. There we go.
We might just want to sign off now.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks a lot for thanks a lot for having me.
That was Esau.
All right. Thanks. You're welcome. I'll see you later.